lovely people to my left introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves.
Oh, I'm Mary McKenzie. I run Volcano Bean, a local indie game studio located near St. Louis. And we are 3 people. We have 2 mobile games, Where's My Goblin and City Kraken, and we're working on our 3rd slightly larger game now.
I am, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
scoot the mics closer.
Yeah. Hello. I am Fox Smith. I am somewhat aware of many hats. I am an illustrator, cosplayer, obviously. I perform around town, and I am the president of the board for Superheroines, Etc., which is a local 501c3 nonprofit with the mission to empower women to embrace their inner nerd.
I am Amanda Knuckles. I am the owner of a company called Gnome Acres. I hand dye yarn that's made themes of pop culture and different comic-based themes, if you will.
So how many in our audience right now either have an independent business or are looking to start one? Okay, cool. So the idea of being an entrepreneur is, I think most people know, is kind of creating something that is your own, something that's unique, somewhere that you can actually be independent of, you know, the man, whatever the man is to you. And there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And I'm really excited to talk to each of these ladies because they represent a lot of different aspects of business that exist within pop culture entertainment. There's people that I think some of you might be aware of, like an Ashley Eckstein, who is kind of the epitome of a female entrepreneur who really took a small idea and found a hole within, you know, nerddom, if you will, and found a business that has grown enormously in the past 7 years. So she created her universe, if you're familiar with it. And that literally was, she went out shopping one day, was like, wow, I really want a Star Wars shirt, and there aren't any for women. This is a problem. She found partners that actually worked with her to create this, what started as a very, very small business that's now exploded into not only her own brand online and at conventions, but you see her brand in Kohl's and in Hot Topic. They have a fashion show every year. It's enormous. And they even now have a female-focused independent press that they're doing, so they're publishing female authors now. So all of us, I think, probably aspire to do something like that and be that cool. That would be great, but in different ways. So I'll tell you a little bit about Nerd for a Living in a bit, but I'd actually like to hear, maybe starting with Mary, you know, what kind of led you into your independent endeavor?
Well, I think my bachelor's degree is in fine arts, and so I kind of always knew that if I wanted to do that, I was going to be doing my own thing, whether it was following fine arts or just being in that world generally tends to be a solo endeavor, and so I've done a variety of different things, including costume design and illustration, and one day, I have 2 daughters, they're 6 and 4, and just watching them play these games like on the iPad and being like, we could probably do something like that. My husband is also creative, one of my partners, and just decided, like, let's make something small, let's see how that works. And we did it, and we really loved it and fell in love with it and continued from there. So it kind of started in that same way of like, we weren't seeing a lot of the games that we would want to play or that we would want our children to play, and so we were trying to make those.
I think for me, a lot of it is just being a person who's very indecisive. There's a lot of things that hold my interest, and so I tend to get my tendrils latched into a lot of different areas, and also going to places where I am meeting people involved in different things, start just expanding the range of things that I do and that I have the opportunity to do. So I also went to school after taking a break for a while to play music, and I finished with my illustration degree, and so that kind of shuffled me in the direction of the illustration, which is the bill-paying part of what I do. And so I did that, but also just being involved in geek communities and performance communities just really opened doors to a lot of other areas. So that's kind of how it roughly came about.
I had kind of the same thing. I have done many, many, many different things.
Tell me about a clown.
I was a professional clown for 16 years. I've worked in radio. I have worked in newspaper, photography. photography. I own my own website design and development company for a while, and actually did that and No Makers when I first started No Makers because I'm crazy. Don't start two and keep two going, and get pregnant. That was the other thing. So I've kind of have the same thing where I've worked for larger companies and was doing all these things for them, and was really seeing that it wasn't getting appreciated, and knew that I could do so much more. And so that's when I finally decided I'm sort of done with the corporate world and started to do it on my own, and actually was able to use all of the skills that I had collected up until that point for my own things, if you will.
And I think that is the closest in relation to what I do with Nerd for a Living, which was created out of going to enough Comic-Cons and talking to incredibly talented artists and creators, and realizing so many of them really didn't know necessarily where to begin. And that meant in the sense of how to market themselves, how to promote themselves, where they could sell things online. And in my day job, I worked in advertising and marketing for a long time, those were the skills I had. So I'm like, wait, I can merge these things. This is fantastic. And I get to go to Comic-Cons all the time. So that's what inspired Nerd for a Living, and that's why we continue to do it, to try to help people figure those things out. I kind of want to move into, like, not to be negative to start off with, but the challenges that people face, because I know that anyone that's about to endeavor and go forward with their own project, they should kind of know, not the fun part as much as they want the fun part. So can you guys talk about some of the challenges you faced creating an indie games dev studio or a yarn business, or illustration and acting and music?
I think a lot of it is there's a lot of logistical things when you want to, no matter what you want to start, you kind of have to see the big picture of where you sort of want to go and know that you might change directions, but kind of lay out a roadmap of different milestones that you might need to hit or you might need to do, and that's different for every industry, so I don't mean to be vague, but like we wanted to put a game on the iPad, so it's like what does it take to actually publish to iOS, and figuring out kind of backwards from there what we needed to do and what software we needed to use and all that different kind of stuff. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is it can be a little overwhelming, but if you break it down into smaller pieces and do it piece by piece, it becomes a lot more manageable. And the biggest thing is kind of knowing that you can find a lot of advice, but finding the advice that works for you, and listening to other people and people who are more experienced than you, and finding the pieces of their story that can help you move along with yours, I think is a big thing, and it's a little scary not to have somebody lead the way. So doing it yourself, I think, is the biggest challenge. It's knowing that you are leading the ship. It's a little terrifying, but it ends up in good places.
Well, and I think, like you said, it's like whenever you're leading the ship, that's the challenge, but knowing that there's somebody out there that can help you.
Yeah, it's like finding those resources, which we were able to do.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to say uncertainty is a big part. As a freelancer, feast or famine, if you've ever heard that, is a very real part of that. You will have a lot of work that will keep you up for days at a time, and then nothing. And that's kind of just the way it goes. And being able to just work your finances to where that's going to work itself out. But yeah, if you're someone who cannot deal with uncertainty, maybe it would not be the thing for you. Because there's a lot of risk involved. Like, it may work out, it may not. I mean, there's certainly many endeavors that I'm sure all of us have done that didn't really pan out before we got to the things that started panning out. And the other thing I would say mainly is that be ready to do a lot of stuff you really don't want to do. Like taxes, for example. I think I had about 16 different tax 1099s this year. That's a lot of forms, in case anyone was wondering. But also, just as a freelancer, I have to deal with people who want things. And they may be terrible things. Like, they may be things that are designed in a way that I would never wish upon anyone. But if that's really what they want, and I really want that money, like, I have to do it. So there is an element of that as well. You have to kind of be able to work with people and find that sweet spot of being able to take direction and not being really offended if somebody says something about your work that you don't like.
I think the hardest challenge has been being taken seriously, because I run No Makers as a business, which is very different than I think what a lot of people in the fiber art industry does. A lot of them are very much, I'm gonna run a sale because I want this cool new shirt. and no joke, I mean, that seriously happens. And for me, it is one of those things that's because I have done so many different things and have been in so many different industries, really presenting the company as a very serious manner and handling it that way has been really, really difficult. Mainly because it's yarn, and I know many of you are probably going, it's yarn, it's funny, it's yarn, but it's a serious, serious business. It's still art, and it's still that same thing where people come to you and they expect you to make these absolutely crazy things, and sometimes I don't think they get that you're the artist, like you're the one that's supposed to be in charge of making this
They're wanting
thing.
to hire you for a reason.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you hired me for my expertise, and you're not letting me do my expertise. So I think that's a really big, I think above everything, that learning QuickBooks, because taxes, that above everything else has been sort of, I mean, because that affects everything. I mean, that affects, you know, me going to the bank and wanting to talk to them about a possible business loan is hysterical, because they go on my website and they see yarn that's named Ninja Cupcake. And I mean, like, you know, Cowgirl Boogie, and they're all looking at me like, what? You know, they don't think that this is a serious type thing. So I think that's been the biggest challenge overall.
No, I kind of am in the same boat with all of you, where it's the challenge of knowing all of the things. Because whenever you are running your own business, you're challenged to know all of the things you've never thought you would be dealing with, ever. You know, you are your own IT person, you're your own marketer, you're your own accountant, until you can afford one, and then definitely hire an accountant.
Yes.
They're amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Never thought I would appreciate accountants so much. But now, you know, with all of that, I'm going to shift it to the positive. So, okay, so yes, there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of effort, and there's a lot of things that you have to learn to just kind of keep up, even if your focus is, I'm just making a game, way bigger than that. On the plus side, you get to be your own person. You get to choose your own path. So let's go reverse this time. Amanda, like, how did you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to do this myself, and why?
I really was tired of working in the corporate world. I think that on my, anytime I'm having a horrible day. I mean, I think back to the people that I've worked for, and while many of them were fantastic, there were a lot of jerks. And I think about that every single time, and that honestly gets me going, not to try and go negative, but that is sort of that's the positive that I take out of the negative of it.
I was going to say, that to me is totally positive. It's escaping something that's not a good situation and turning it into a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is having that creative freedom, and there's somewhat of I'm not the kind of person that can sit still, and so for me, having all of these things that I can make and do is sort of a challenge to myself of just how crazy can I make this particular promotion for this new yarn. I mean, I've been done crazy things. I have a club that I do, and that is probably my most favorite thing that I do out of everything, because it's crazy, it's absolutely insane. I make little bitty, the knitters and crocheters, weavers, like these things called mini skeins, and they're just like little samples of yarn skeins. And when I put together a package, the last one that I did was an ode to breakfast, so it had like scrambled eggs, bacon, all the yarn looks like this, right? And I packaged it up with a fork, knife, and spoon, and packaged it up in like little napkin and stuff. So it's little things like that where it's sort of like mixed medium almost. I mean, and being able to promote something like that, because it's presenting it in a completely different way that nobody would ever think of. And for me, I think that is the best part, is getting to do all of that. And again, using all the knowledge that I've had for me, not for anyone else. Because I think one of the reasons why I quit the website business was that they came to me for my advice and then it wouldn't work. And they were wondering why they didn't make money. Well, you gotta do these things. And for me, it's almost like a marketing test, if you will, because I get to do these things and then I get to see the response, and it's kind of playing.
And you're answering to yourself. You're answering to your audience as well and responding to them, but mostly when it comes down to creative control, it's yours.
I guess one of the things I love the most is not having to see anyone most of the time. Like, I love seeing all of you now, but I need my space.
Everyone here will go and hibernate for the next
Right, right. It's nice to, because my studio is in my home, so I can go in there and just hang out, my dog and my cats, and just listen to music and watch whatever I want while I'm working. And every moment that I'm working is time that I am working. I'm not on the clock just sitting there staring into space waiting for the day to end. I'm either working on something, or I'm working on something else, or I'm running an errand, or I'm hanging out, you know. So there's no downtime really. And the flip of that, again, not to go too much into the bad side, but the flip of that is that when there's a big project, there are no hours. There's not like you get off at 6 and you were done. Like maybe 6 in the morning, and then not sleeping, and then just starting to work again after going to the bathroom. But just having that time that is your own, that you are in charge of, is really neat. And also just being able to be so involved with the stuff you're doing. Like the main job for illustration I do is children's books, and I see it from the beginning to the end. And that is a project. Then it is done. I'm not stuck in this middle place where I'm like, oh, I'm doing this every day and I don't see anything happening. So I get to really be involved, and everything I'm doing is helping to improve the next book I do, and things like that. So it's very growth, spiritual experience.
Nice. Yeah, I think similar to that, I have a background in theater and stage management, and also retail management. So a lot of video game development for me is getting to see a project, like an actual product, go from like idea to something you can play on your tablet or phone, or eventually hopefully computer and console. And just that, and being able to use all the different assets of my background in art, and my husband was a musician, and like all the little things that we've done up until now have really all come together into this like really great venture. And it's just really, I don't know, it's exciting to be able to, create your own product like from start to finish and have it out there.
Well, and kind of to that point, I think we were discussing a little bit earlier, the idea of, people always talk about like, I want to live my passion, I want to pursue my dream. It's like, you can follow your skills to your dream. Like, keep building skills, and believe it or not, it will actually sort of make sense after a little while. The things that you can kind of lead you to something you never would have expected just based on what you're doing today, because it can all influence it. Like, just kind of to that point, we're sitting at a comic convention, and obviously everyone up here has very nerdy pursuits, I would say. And how would you say that kind of the world that we are in right now, the nerdy world, kind of has helped and given you specific advantages to what you do? Like, has it fit not only creatively into you, but the community that is out here? How's that enabled you to do what you do?
I think for us, like, really people who are into the nerdy and fandom, like, they just love what they love so much, and it's so rewarding to put something out there and have people show that enthusiasm for it, and as well as just the inspiration from all the things that you love. And I don't know, it really is a community, and even if like your fandoms are a little bit different, like everyone kind of comes together because they love something so much. They want to dress up and they want to be surrounded by things that are fan art of things that they love. And I don't know, for us it's really been just that enthusiasm that comes from the community has been really great to work off of.
I would say for that, I'm actually going to refer to the work I do with superheroes, etc. Because of being involved in nerdy pursuits, that's how I got involved initially. And being involved in this group has been really changing for me, because a lot of it is about, again, empowering women to embrace their inner nerd in a world that sometimes does not accept that women want to be a part of nerd communities. And it's really been a great place to kind of learn about a lot of different things, but also get involved in doing panels. And we've done a lot of panels that have to do with talking about geek feminism and why is it important to seek representation. And all of a sudden I look around at the media, I'm like, I don't see any Asian people that I identify with. What is this? And my eyes really hadn't been open to stuff like that until I actually started looking for it. And it's gotten to the place where it kind of goes back and affects my own work, because when I'm doing children's books, I make an effort to put diversity in there, just so that it's normal, so that kids see different types of people, and that's very normal for them. And that's something that I can do, but that directly came from a nerdy area that roundaboutly went back.
Definitely.
I would say in the fiber art world, one of the bigger yarn events that happens across the country is actually sort of like a mini Comic-Con, because when you walk in, there is fandom everywhere. I mean, absolutely everywhere. And those people are so incredibly passionate, very, very passionate. There are, you'd be hard pressed to find a knitter that isn't watching Doctor Who very consistently. I mean, there's those, as deep as people are rooted in comics and pop culture and things like that, it happens in the fiber art world. So for me, it's a combination of the two coming together, and they both feed off of one another. I mean, here, I know that there are some of my customers that are here going to the event today. And then vice versa, I know there are people here that will be at those yarn conventions. So it's that cross-contamination that I absolutely love. And whenever I do come up with an Avengers bundle or something like that, like, people are so incredibly, totally into it. And for me, it's awesome because it's not just women that are interested in it. There's a lot of male knitters and crocheters, and a lot of their kids get into it. And I do a lot of very kid-oriented things, and I have a podcast where I talk about Legos because I have a problem, like a really, really big problem. And a lot of people have their kids actually watch the podcast. So for me, it's more like, it's become this family affair, and I think every time I hear someone, I mean, just this past week, a 7-year-old knit like this little bitty cute whale with my yarn and was super proud of herself. You know, and the picture of her with her face all lit up, that's the kind of stuff I think that really truly keeps me going, because it's seeing how much just love that people have for that kind of thing, and just making something and doing something that they like to do.
Well, and I think with Nerd for a Living, I have the fortunate position of watching so many others kind of achieve that, where they're finding their creative niche and then being able to take it to the masses and figure out where they belong. And that, to me, has been the most rewarding thing, like being able to go to conventions, talk to artists 1 year and seeing them struggle with, you know, how well they're doing or how much money they're making in artist salary or what have you, and then, you know, going back to them a year later and being like, I followed the advice, or I listened to the podcast, or I did XYZ things, and suddenly I'm making a difference. I've changed how I, you know, present myself, and it's working. That's incredibly gratifying. But speaking just kind of to the idea of like the gratification we can take away from nerddom, I kind of want to hit on what we've been talking, what the panel title even mentions, which is like, these are ladies making careers out of their fandoms. And to Fox's point, like, it's not always the easiest thing to do in the fan world. And, you know, whenever you're a woman going into a small business, it's already difficult. Like, it's stacked against you in some cases. And you know, there are certain advantages. I won't say that it's all negative, but certainly there are challenges that you face as a woman that you have, that I feel like we should address. Like, Fox, maybe you could actually start this one and kind of talk a little bit about it.
It's the kind of thing for me that for the performance side of it, you have to kind of have a bit of a thick skin, some might say, because if you're going to post anything anywhere, people are going to have negative things to say about it. And there are certain times where being a woman impacts the negative things that people say and the way that it's said and what they think about what you're trying to do. So I will say that for me personally, I have not, thankfully, experienced a whole lot of negativity toward any of my pursuits because I'm a woman or because I am half Asian. But I also see it as my responsibility to let other people know what my experience is like, make sure other people's experiences are heard. Again, like normalizing diversity in the places that I can, and really taking steps into different areas to see that things get better while I'm here to see them.
I know, Mary, like working in gaming, that's kind of an obvious problem area that we've seen for a long time. It's getting much, much better, but I'm thinking more along the lines of like the past few years. Like, there's been a lot of issues for women but they're pushing forward, and that's what's great about it.
A lot of that, but like as far as our own personal studio, honestly the biggest problem I have is I work with my husband. A lot of times because I manage and run our company, people assume I'm the secretary. Or they'll ask if I need to ask my husband's opinion on something, and they usually swiftly learn that no, I'm the one that makes those choices, and obviously speaking with him and we make those choices together, but usually like I don't need permission to make a choice, and that I think is often a hurdle. And it's interesting like where that'll come up, but it's getting a little bit better. More and more people, it's not such a crazy, shocking thing that we wouldn't be running a company at all, or a games-focused company. And so it is little bit by little bit getting better. we're
And there's
also
so many
still really,
women in the gaming industry.
yes,
That
and that's like
it's
more and
becoming-
more, and like people, like we
Right.
demo at the St. Louis Science Center, and we have little cards for the St. Louis Dev Co-op for people who make games, and like more and more do we see women taking those cards, and it's exciting, even though the small amount of time that we've been a company. So I don't know, we really focus that way.
Is it still your favorite thing though when a little girl comes up and is
Yes.
freaking out over your game? I thought so.
Absolutely, 100%, especially when they want to make games too.
Yes.
Not only that they like playing our games, but like my daughter, like both of my daughters, they help us with, or they help us with art. Like they want to come in, they'll do their own character designs for our newest game, and like my oldest daughter will draw me level designs for a platformer I'm working on, and like they don't ever see themselves not being able to do that. Where when I was growing up, it wasn't even, granted technology was a very, very different, but it wasn't even a thought in my head. So where they will never not have that thought in their head, so that is really exciting for me. So.
For me, the fiber art world is mostly female. I mean, the majority of it is female driven, which is, it's funny because this is the first industry I've ever worked in my life where it has been mostly female driven, because radio, newspaper, all those things, they are not at all. You were very much in the minority. The problems that I have is sort of the same thing, where I actually had this problem last summer, because I was building a new workshop to put a new dye studio in, and contacting construction companies to come out and give me a bid, and they would want to know when I need to talk to my husband about this. Now he has zero, I mean, absolutely zero. Occasionally he helps me put packages, you know, out for shipping, or he puts yarn wraps on. Like, he has minimal to do with it. And so many people, I mean, just, it is so funny because the bank will call me and ask me, you know, can we talk about your account? Not me, they'll call him and ask about the accounts, and he's like, this is really funny that you're calling about No Makers because I have nothing to do with it. But I think it's that, and again, it goes back to that being taken seriously thing. Which is, it always boggles my mind, especially with fiber art being mostly female, that still having that issue of there is no dude involved in this process, and people being surprised by it. I think that's the thing that takes me back a lot, is people not understanding that there is no dude involved in this situation at all. It's just me.
Well, I definitely think that that's the case where you end up being kind of treated as the default. Like, okay, well, that's great, we'll talk to you, but we'll really talk to your partner who's a man. And sometimes it's completely unintentional. It's not always like some malicious, like, you are a woman, I don't believe you. It's sometimes just a default reaction of, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to the man because he must be in control of it. Like, I'm basically the producer of our podcast, and I'm usually the one reaching out to every person that has been on our podcast. If we're putting together an event, I'm the one organizing it. And most of the time, people will still want to continue talking to me. But there have definitely been instances where as soon as my husband, Adrian, who's my partner, enters the picture, they default to him. And I am suddenly like, oh, well, you're the one who sends the emails, but you're not the important one. And it shifts over. Thankfully, that has not happened very often, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And I think over time, I'm already seeing that get better. And sometimes Adrian feels invisible, so that's always kind of like, yeah. I want to get into something practical for everyone sitting here, and kind of get into what resources there are locally and online that can help them with their endeavors as they kind of progress into whatever they might be wanting to do. So, you know, can you guys all speak to something about that?
Yeah, when we started making our first game, we actually had no idea that there's actually a really large games development community in St. Louis, and Harold, right, it is in the back. And so while in process of making our first game, Where's My Goblin, I just did a Google search for like St. Louis independent game developers, and it came across the website and just found a trove of information that was so incredibly helpful. And they had local meetups, and we went, and like, I really can't put into words how incredibly helpful that experience has been to like reach out and connect with the other local developers, and like just their knowledge or their advice, or just practical things. Like last night we were demoing at the St. Louis Science Center, and the people next to us, like their iPad, the kids kept going out of their app into a different app, and like they're like, oh, let me show you the settings so that people can't do that anymore. So from really minimal things like that to just like, here's a great contact for you to contact if you want to put your game on this platform, or yeah, there's just really a ton of things from reaching out to your local community, no matter what that community is. And I really feel like every community probably has something varying in size. So yeah, follow up. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say, to echo that, definitely, I don't want to use the word networking.
It's such a dirty word, but it's a good word. Like,
you know, but
take it back.
but at the same time, you go out and talk to people who are doing what you're interested in doing. Like, even if you are in a place like this, like, and you want to do artwork, just talk to people. Like, people want to talk about what they're doing. Everybody wants to talk about what they're doing. And there is something that everyone can tell you about how they got there, what they're doing, what the struggles have been. And you never know who you meet that is going to influence things later. Like the company that I work for with the children's books, I got just a call one day where somebody I knew was like, hey, they're looking for an illustrator, you know, and there's so many instances where just by knowing other people and getting myself out there, other people have been like, oh yeah, I know somebody who does that, you know, and I have gotten so many opportunities just by being out there, connecting with the community, and also by yourself, like an actual handwritten schedule. It's just, there's something nice about writing down where you need to be when, that just is not the same as typing it digitally.
For me, there wasn't really like a community that I could follow for my particular industry. So for me, I really started to watch other businesses that were starting about the same time I was, but were just a couple steps ahead of me. There's actually some home improvement bloggers that are Young House Love, and they transformed into, they were redoing their kitchen, they started a blog about it, and then it rolled into, they now have hardware in Home Depot and Target and a bunch of different things. And for me, I watched them because they started about a year before I started No Makers. And watching them talk about things like get a P.O. box and, you know, little things like that, just those little bitty tidbits, I watched them and sort of learned from that. And I actually emailed them multiple times and talked back and forth with them and connected with them on LinkedIn even, and sort of got I think the thing is that no matter what you do, getting the business side of things in line will make doing the artistic side 10 times easier. So if you can lay that groundwork in the beginning and taking it really, really seriously, you know, making sure like emails and websites, all that stuff matches up with what's actually on your business card. Not I'm Joe Schmo, but I'm Joe Phyllis on a different card. You know what I mean? Little things like that. So for me, it was that. It was just picking out someone else that was starting to do something, you know, that I knew was going to grow into something bigger, and just watching them go through their trials and tribulations. And it's always, you know, it's always a good thing to sort of emulate someone, but not copy them, because that really angers people a lot.
As it should. I think for me it was just getting over the hurdle of being okay reaching out to people and accepting that networking was a good thing and not a scary thing. And it's still scary. I lie to myself every day. Like it's still hard to go and force yourself to be like, all right, I'm going to go talk to that stranger, even if they don't necessarily have this, they're not following the same dream I am, or they don't have the same passion. Talk to people, make friends. Like it seems so simple, but it is really hard. And the more you do it, the more it will end up helping you and guiding you to what you actually really want to do. We would never be where we are without having met incredibly kind, generous, helpful people. You know, it is not only not copying in any way, but emulating what successes there have been, but also talking to those people directly and saying, what were the things that failed you? Like, learn from their mistakes so that you don't have to necessarily make the same one, because you're going to make tons of your own. It's all there for you. And everything you guys said, I agree with too, because the internet is your friend, as infinite as it is. You can find everything.
Yeah, you will be.
There is a YouTube
spend
video.
so much time researching. I think, you know, that's the one question that I get a lot is, what do I do? And I mean, hours upon hours sitting on Google reading articles from different people, just trying to figure it out. There is no easy way. There is no, here is your success guide, because everyone would have their own small business. And it's completely different for everyone. So the research side of it is huge.
Well, and also finding how that applies to your audience. Like, so what Young House Love did and how that applies to Yarn, or like what another game development company did and how that would apply. Like, we make a different kind of game, so how the things that they did, how would that apply to our audience? I think makes a big difference on like the emulating and not copying it.
Or they did that and that really went bad.
Yes, exactly.
Then you learned.
Yes, exactly.
I think the other thing that is being able to be nimble. Like, you might have this very specific idea of what you think, this is the dream, this is what I'm going to do, but be flexible about it, because you don't know in a year, like that beautiful little precious thing that you've created could really kind of shift to something else that you were never expecting, and it can make you 10 times happier. So watch your audience as you continue to grow it, and learn from what you're doing to see, okay, what about this do I really still love, and what do I'm like, I can't do this anymore, I hate it. Because it might surprise you.
If it seems scary, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's the number one rule. Like, if you're terrified, you're probably in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're all extroverts. I think that's the big thing, is that, well, I mean, most artists are extroverts, so it's really hard to actually, introverts, sorry. The opposite.
It's like, wait a second.
I've had a limited amount of coffee today. Most of us are introverts and need to be extrovert, and I think that is probably I was a professional clown, but I hid behind a mask. You know what I mean? Like, but it's figuring out that how do I actually talk to people and do that. I think that's the biggest.
I want to make sure we have time for some questions from you guys. But the last thing I want to kind of throw out there is there any like specific like risk you feel like you took that really got you to where you are?
I mean, I think really it's just taking that first step. Like, for me, it was really kind of like stepping away from the corporate world and taking that and not looking back. And every once in a while I think about how terrifying it is, that if I ever had to return to it, how long it's been. But hopefully that'll never matter. But it's scary to lead your own path, because people don't always necessarily get it. And especially if it's not immediately commercially successful, people kind of assume it's a hobby. And so knowing that you're building something and that it's going to take a little while, and like looking at the long game, is definitely really helpful for that. But yeah, so that it's always, I guess everything is a risk.
Sitting right here, isn't it?
Yeah, all of the things, pretty much, yes, all of the things.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, again, the path that I took was kind of here, there, and everywhere, but I think really first setting out and doing something that, as you said, not a lot of people are going to get. Some people will be like, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing something that makes more sense to me? You know, but doing that and kind of being at peace with yourself and having support and having resources, you know, I mean, just jump.
Yeah.
I always had the jobs that I was good at, that I knew I could do to make money, and never had the job that I actually wanted to do. So I think that was the biggest risk for me, was actually going and pursuing something. And I do owe it to my husband, because whenever I left the corporate world, it was one of those things where he seriously sat me down and said, you've never done anything that you've actually wanted to do. Why don't you just take a, because I go, and he says, why don't you just take a step back and actually think about what you want to do, as opposed to what's just going to pay the bills.
It's amazing how risky it actually feels to just follow something that makes you happy. Like it's like you almost have to forgive yourself for being like, no, it's all right. It's not just earning a paycheck. It's actually fulfilling something that I need fulfilled in my life. So that's me. So I really hope you guys have some questions. So anyone, raise your hand. Oh, right here. Go for it.
I wanted to ask with, I'm going to say this. I know this happens to me a lot, but are you ever drawing and then when you finish, you feel unsatisfied or you don't like it?
Yes.
In case you guys couldn't hear it, do you ever feel unsatisfied with what you've created, essentially?
Yes. And the worst thing is that everything I've created over about 2.5 years ago, I don't like. I mean, but that is part of the process of becoming better. Because every drawing, it's like exercising muscles in a way. You know, you're always taking in inspiration from different places, and you're always refining your own style. And so the more you do, the better you're going to get. And naturally, you're going to look at some things and be like, oh no, what has happened here? But, I mean, that happens to everybody, and the main thing to just remember is that just keep going forward, and that stuff that's older is going to be behind you because you are always getting better.
Sure. Anyone else? All right. Do you guys want to talk about where they can either find you here or find you online?
Sure.
Because I understand that sometimes whenever I'm at one of these things, I don't have a question, but something might come up in my head, and then you want to follow them on Twitter and know where you can actually ask them again later.
You can find me on volcanobean.com, and we are at volcanobean on Twitter, and I'm at Mary McKelly on Twitter as well.
Yeah, if you want to see any anything I do, you can go to foxforhire.com, or on social media, Five-Tailed Fox is pretty much everything anywhere. If you come across that, it's probably me. But also, you should check out Superheroines, etc. It's with an etc.org to see more about the empowering ladies group that I'm a part of, because that's really cool.
It is. You guys actually have a fundraiser coming up very soon,
We
right?
do.
Plug.
Actually, on Saturday, April 16th, is our inaugural fundraiser called Superheroines, etc. presents Drinks and Curios. There will be drinks, there will be curios, it will be a great time. You will love every minute. There's like a whiskey tasting, the arch rivals, roller derby girls are going to be there. There is going to be video games, board games. There's going to be a board game that is in the process of being kickstarted right now. There is going to be treats, desserts. You pretty much need to be there, is what I'm saying.
You would be crazy not to come.
You would be crazy not to come.
I have a colorway called Roller Derby Diva. What do you think of that?
That's awesome.
I'm No Acres on everything. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, website, all of the things.
You please follow our podcast. It's Nerd for a Living, and you can find all of them at nerdforliving.com. We're at Nerd for a Living on pretty much every social channel except Instagram, where there's underscores between Nerd for Living. It's really stinky whenever that happens. It's just no fun. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying, and I hope each one of your endeavors works out. Thank you so much.